I am inviting a person who has a vast experience in industry. He is alumni of Indian Institute of Management and has been advisor to industry education. He belongs to Adobe, the company which is global leader in digital transformation technologies, $6 billion in revenues, and global leader in education, 10,000 plus universities and higher education. Welcome him with a big round of applause, none other, Mr. Supreeth Nagaraju, Head Education West, South India and Sri Lanka, Adobe Systems. Big round of applause. He has a presentation on transforming education in digital age. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Respected academic leaders, peers from industry, and respected panel members and friends. I represent Adobe Education. We are one of the largest verticals within the global Adobe family. Adobe, as you all know, is synonymous to Photoshop and PDFs, as most of you may be using day in and day out. So I'm going to be talking specifically about what is the impact of digital transformation technologies. I'm not going to be specifically talking about skilling and the importance of digital skilling so much in the landscape of the current context of digital age. I'm sure most of you have already discussed, debated about it at large. I'm going to be focusing especially on the fact of execution, the key and the speed at which you need to execute compared to the previous decade in terms of various transformations that you've brought about in processes, be it a school education process, be it a vocational education process, or be it a university as a functioning, or any other educational bodies that you would be looking at. Let me start you with a quick video on what we call as New School. It's an emulation of various sets of research that we have done across the world, across landscapes, both the society as well as the industry, and also an amalgamation of schools, amalgamation of what's happening in the vocational space, amalgamation of what's happening in the university space, and larger impact to the society at large. All right, there seems to be a technical glitch on the voice front though, but it's just a video that's playing here. While we get this fixed, let me take a moment on what are we doing in education specifically out. So, as a global leader in education, we have been focusing heavily on transformation of, can I have lights? Is it too dark here? Some lights, please. Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, so what are we doing in education? Education as a field, specifically from Adobe standpoint, is focusing on digital transformation solutions. As I mentioned, we're looking at 2 to 3 large core areas. One, of course, is skilling area, which I discussed about. Second one is specifically do with various forms of workflow managements and transformation technologies that would address core pain areas from an educational standpoint. And as I mentioned, it's a tough task in terms of transformation. I heard the previous panelists specifically talking about adaptation to various forms of transformation that are happening in the education area. It's a tough one, and this is how it is currently in terms of the current landscape. It's a tough one. Taking a course correction is a very important area, which I would urge each one of you as academic leaders to look at. And digital is one of the core areas that I would, harp upon over the next few minutes. So let's look at what is the pace at which things are changing. As this slide talks about, we will see about 20,000 years of progress in the 21st century, about 1,000 times greater than the 20th century. And that's a startling rate at which the changes are expected to happen. And the next generation, that the Generation Z, is moving at a much faster pace in terms of technology adoption, digital adoption. And it's very quintessential for every single educational institution at all stratas of the education system to be prepared for this. Let me substantiate it with few data points. If you look at this slide, this is the advent of some of the core technologies that have shaped our society, right? 40 years is what it took for our basic technology systems like an electricity or a stove as an adoption in our society. But if you look at the last 10 years, it's just over 10 years that cell phones have been adopted at a much faster pace, similar to what we have seen in smartphones or even the digital technologies. So which is a proof and point that the next generation is adopting it much faster. Let me give you some more statistics. It took us 35 days. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this game called Angry Birds. Angry Birds took 35 days for a global adoption of more than 1 billion downloads. And the maximum age bracket, the maximum demographic background was 13 to 30. Billion plus population worldwide. 35 days. So what I'm essentially trying to communicate is the fact that today digital wave has already taken over. It's amongst us as we speak right now. And it's important for us to catch up with it and also execute it within the realm of the things that we're currently trying to achieve. Look at the proof and point. One of the biggest indexes that anybody would reach out to when they're trying to understand what is the digital penetration, what is the adaptation across various landscapes, not just globally but also in India, is the adoption of smartphones. 2.1 billion is a startling number, right? And let's look at India. What's the Indian scenario? There's no better time than today in India. As of June 2016, there are 462 million internet users, and this is the largest market for smartphone and internet adoption worldwide. I'm sure all of you have read about various initiatives by some of the global MNCs and leaders who are trying to bring in innovation in terms of internet supply into our landscape across the length and breadth of the country, right from Jammu to Kanyakumari to east and west, right? Why is that happening? That's primarily because of the rate at which internet adoption is happening, irrespective of the educational background of individuals. People are willing to forego of their square meal, but they want to have a smartphone in their hand, which is worth 3,000 bucks, right? Now look at the largest digital project that has ever happened in the history of mankind. Aadhaar, 5.3 years, 1 billion plus rollouts. It's a digital revolution in the world. And we need to be proud about it. It's an Indian product done by our own, bunch of citizens. And it's been adopted 5.5 years. There's no country in the world who's done this. If Aadhaar can do this, why can't education do this? And look at the second biggest index that I would bring to everybody's attention here. Usually advertising and marketing is considered as a taboo in education. And I would strongly disagree to that. Because today, unless and until you make yourself available and known to the larger population, you will never be able to get them to adopt it. And it is predicted that by 2020, digital advertising spends is about to touch about 3.8 billion. And let me tell you, today digital advertising is 40% of the traditional advertising spend. 40% is a big jump. We're talking about 3 to 4 years of digital revolution, and within 4 years, we have 40% market share in the digital advertising spend across many companies who have been as part of this. So this is a very important set of statistics that actually, would shake the fundamentals in the way in which educational institutions have been engaging with a lot of, students, be it in the traditional +2 and also the university space or an executive education space or even for the vocational education space as such. Now, what's the Adobe skin in the game here? So we promise, and we have delivered over the last 30 plus years. 35 years is when, is our total experience in the digital space, and we've been innovating day in and day out. And we've been in the education space for about 30 years now. In Indian education space, we've been about 8 to 10 years. And our promise to the education fraternity is that we will help you deliver standout digital experiences. Not just deliver digital experience, but we come with a clear-cut outcome-driven initiatives. both in terms of student impact and also in terms of business impact. And we mean business in education. So what is the need of the hour? So the need of the hour today is to ensure that you deliver personalized experiences which is relevant to your respective geographies, to your respective demographies, and it should be real time. There's no point in delivering a curriculum which is probably 8 years old and not even willing to reinvent it or relook it. I'm sure all of us have, challenges within the realm of the affairs that we are in, be it government affairs, be it public affairs, or even for that matter, the executional speed at which faculties can adopt these set of new technologies or, the curriculums that we are looking at. But we need to figure out a way to do this. And I strongly believe that ICT can help, deliver this. And particularly digital technologies have time and again proven this. Some of the proof-in points that I shared with you in the previous slides are proof-in pudding for these. And some of the Gartner studies also share that, at least 30% of the higher education institutions globally, and also in India, I strongly believe that in India, will have a learning analytics strategy to improve student outcomes. It's important for you to raise to the ulterior motive of the individuals. There is, no way by which you can have one dress fits all scenario. There is a necessity for customization. There is a necessity for localization. There is a necessity for extremely important aspect, which is democratization of content creation and delivery to the respective lowest common denominator in your classroom, which is probably missing today. It is not important, not just important to publish journals and research papers, but it is important equally to raise to the ulterior motive of individuals and raise to the lowest common denominator in the classroom. And let me over the next few slides, try to help you understand what all we can do to achieve these set of goals. So the next slide specifically talks about what is today's students' motives. They're all digital natives. They are born with, digital devices, digital access, ever since, they started schools or before schools for that matter. They're connected. And they want to create and deliver and communicate and collaborate the way they want it. I mean, they also want to learn with the simplest format. They would like to do it. They would like to collaborate and understand various things and also question the status quo of the institutions, the way in which they are taught. And most important, I think I heard a couple of points in the previous panels talking about people are afraid or students are afraid of being entrepreneurial. I completely disagree. I completely disagree with that fact. Let me give you some statistics. I've been part of a few of the panels which do business planning competitions in India by Indian universities and by various industry bodies. We see a flock of Indian students, irrespective of their economic strata, participating in business planning competitions and want not just funding, but also industry support, mentoring. How many of the universities are actually providing this aspect? Please think about it. Important point to ponder about. How many of them are actually encouraging students to experiment? I don't care if you fail, but please try. How many of you are doing that? These are few initiatives that I think I'd like to bring it to your attention. And the desire to be more creative. That's a very important aspect. It's one side of the story is, while you get good marks and score as per the respective, curriculums that have been set across and the evaluation patterns, but at the same time, it's important for you to look at how do you question the status quo and make them think a little more creatively. So what are the areas, students look at and how do they go about this journey? And what is it that, you need to look at from a student experience standpoint, be it in a university system or be it in a school education system? It's important to attract the right mix. Diversity is important. We stress upon diversity in corporate world. The same applies to education as well. It's important to ensure that, you have good mix of students, both from a gender standpoint, both from a geographical standpoint, and also from various strata of interest levels in the industry standpoint, right? So communication to attract students is very, very important. This to a larger extent boils down to an important aspect of digital communications and outreach as a program. We can help you do that. Enrollments, students with ease. enrollment students with ease. And we need to look at how do we look at seamless workflows and integrations. The workflows today are heavily paper driven. We've heard enough and more about ERP systems being implemented in educational institutions, but how many of them are very seamless and connected across? We can help you do that. Lastly, the important aspect is going to be, it needs to be personalized, it needs to be rich, it needs to be integrated across. In-demand skills, you need to be relevant with respect to the skills that are being taught out. It's not just about IT skills, it's about skills that can cross-leverage across industry verticals. And last but not the least, how do you look at interaction with external bodies, be it industry bodies, your alumni, how do you bring their relevant skills and knowledge sharing across to the industry aspect? So Adobe today has been driving all of these specific outcomes across the globe and also in India in terms of achieving various milestones that a student needs and assisting you as a technology partner, both in skilling, documentation workflows, and various formats of automation technologies. We have some very relevant solutions from an industry standpoint in India. We've heard enough and more about counterfeiting of marks cards and stuff like that. We are a global leader in security solutions from a documentation standpoint. I can help you, talk more about this offline. We have digital marketing, which is one of the biggest outbursts in the industry today. We are a global leader in digital marketing. We can help you deliver various forms of engagement, social engagements. We can help you do analytics in terms of the way in which people are looking at your university, who's talking good about you on Facebook, who's talking bad about you, what is trending on Twitter, or what is the way in which you can look at optimizing your media spend and stuff like that. So what are the technologies that help you drive these? We are largely one of the first and foremost cloud transformation companies, helping you deliver both content, data, and digital marketing across the platform. We call these as Creative Cloud, Document Cloud, and Marketing Cloud across. And we have various outcome-driven initiatives, again, from a skilling standpoint. We have Adobe Education Exchange, which helps universities and institutions to adopt these technologies, both in terms of technology transfer, also in terms of professional development programs and certifications from an education standpoint. Not just that, we also connect you with the industry. We are one of the largest social media platform, helping students and faculty members to exhibit their talent, connect them with the respective industry stakeholders, look at peer-to-peer collaboration, reviews, even look at entrepreneurial stints, and of course the job side is a part of this as well. So this is a very important slide, more from a documentation standpoint, which I mentioned about. I'm sure all of you are familiar with PDF. PDF is one of the world's largest used software. And now, as a PDF engine, we also have e-signature and documentation workflow, which could be of great use from an automation standpoint. Just give a sneak peek on this. Now, a few slides specifically on customers who have adopted this and what are the outcomes that they have driven out of this. Swinburne University in Australia has adopted some of our skilling programs. We have many of these examples. I'm just giving you one or two of them. They have driven digital marketing and digital media as part of their core curriculum, which is now in high demand, not just from an IT standpoint, but also from lots of traditional businesses that have been there. USC Annenberg, they've been focusing on skilling as an initiative, more so from the media angle. Our own Manipal group, in India has been one of our largest customers for digital marketing in the education space. They drive admissions and student outreach from an Indian market standpoint for students as well as for faculty outreach. Last but not the least, one of the largest universities in the US, Philadelphia University, has been using our digital document management solution and e-signatures, more so from automating and also from security documentation standpoint. So that's pretty much about it from my end. Thank you so much for your time. If there are any questions I'd like to take on the go, or I'm around for the day, we can have these discussions. Yeah. Yes.
We were discussing about in the previous session can be improved by way of providing this channel. I talked about, I think, 6 channels that I had provided in the curriculum in the 2 revisions I had done in 2 universities. In the latest institution, I had provided 6 channels. 2 of the channels I talked about.
Yeah.
The third channel is the student mentoring.
Yeah.
Student mentoring actually can address a lot of issues. One is you see a lot of dropouts occurring in professional education. After a year or 2, they just drop out for various reasons, because of lack of performance, because of lack of support systems, because of lack of understanding, because of disconnect with the institution or the teachers, because there is a separation anxiety, and then there is a peer pressure, a lot of things going on in the student's life. When they are especially in a UG program, they are away from the family. And there is nobody there really interested in them in their success, successful completion of the program, except in the academic part. There may be mechanisms, but individually they don't look at non-academic matters that impact students' performance and progress. So this can be addressed through the student mentoring channel, but oftentimes you find in institutions, student mentoring is provided as a non-academic, non-credit administrative load. So the faculty perceive that as an additional load, and oftentimes they may be expected to get in touch with parents, but there may not be.
I'd like to pause you over there. The word load is very derogative.
It is not derogative.
It
is called actually load.
With a heavy heart, I say that. But I think education as a core area should have mentoring as a part and parcel of the overall. Any faculty should carry that. I teach out of passion as well.
Absolutely.
And then, when you teach, unless and until you're bringing an industry relevance and trying to share your experience and give them inputs on what they can do, or bring in peers from the industry who can share, or use technology platforms like, I spoke about Behance. Behance, incidentally, we've not done any great marketing in India, but, I'm happy to share that there are close to about 1.5 lakh Indian students who are there on this site. And they are basically getting mentored by various sets of industry, leaders across the planet. It's important for every institution to look at socializing. It need not necessarily be only through Facebook. There are platforms like Behance. You can create your own social platform. I'm sure each one of you are a legends by yourself. You have more than decades of, student and alumni base. Create an atmosphere where one can talk to another. It's just about connecting. It's a community, right?
Informal connection is one thing. Formally helping somebody where there is a kind of a serious interest in the student's progress and student's success in life, not just in the degree. So that can be brought through the mentoring. And the faculty load that I'm referring to, not in a derogative fashion, but it is a standard terminology that is looked at to calculate how many hours a particular faculty is engaged in a formal role, whether it is in a teaching or in an administrative assignment, department level, school level, administrative level, or in research.
Fairly, you can't define this. It brings down to one single point, which I would strongly recommend each one of you. I mean, I could be wrong if somebody has a different opinion. Inspiration. You have to inspire students to look at collaborating, using various sets of connections you have or they do on their own. That is the only way by which you can grow. You cannot expect. Probably, I'm sure each one of you as universities, both in private and public, have at least few 10,000s or few lakhs as your students, right? I mean, you cannot cater to the scale that you are in. But the only way by which you can do it is inspire them to start connecting and start, being connected to the communities who are professionals out there. That is the easiest way by which you can do it.
See, what you're talking about
I think,
actually...
excuse me. I think both have made a very good point. What Prayat Bahara is talking about is the actual reality on the ground.
Yes.
What you are talking of is a desirable utopian situation. I think we should stop at this because you may have individual opinions and spin, use. So there may be some other questions actually to you or anybody.
Yeah, sure.
There is another speaker also.
Learning outcomes you are talking about is top 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. The education system is right now dealing with first 4 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, or first 3 levels of taxonomy.
We'll take this
so
offline.
The jump has to take on.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other question on this session? Any other question? From anybody?
None? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.